Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, battlers, and hashtag girls that PvP. The Nut93 dominated, decimated, disrespected this tournament with Double Dragon. Bruh. Now, of course, if you do not know the Nut93, you definitely should, and you should get familiar, because the Nut93 was in the finalists, for example, in the European Championships, faced off against the one, the only Raging Taz, is also a coach on the Go Stadium Elite team, but also was the one and only victor of the European Ultimate Showdown. Now, in this tournament, the Nut93 was victorious, of course, running actually the Double Dragon strategy. Now, going 5-0 with a team composed of, as you can see here, Venusaur, Glalie, Celio, Dragonair, Relicanth, and then Kingdra. Surprisingly enough, when I asked the Nut93 about this strategy and about this tournament, the word he used to describe his strategy was brainless. And I believe he calls it brainless because, as we all know, in the Timeless Cup meta, dragons are almost completely dominant, and given the restrictions within the Timeless Cup, it is fairly difficult. If you are not prepared for Double Dragon, it will steamroll you in your tournaments. So this shoutcasting, I guess, or this tournament highlight is actually going to be demonstrating his execution of the Double Dragon strategy, in hopes that with the rest of the Timeless Cup tournaments for this month, you can build a different team and a different strategy and take advantage of the open meta that we have with the Timeless Cup. There are so many different options to use that are unique, that require skill, that require knowledge, and that require a lot of preparation. A strategy like this does not. So remember to subscribe if you feel the Go Stadium vibe, and power up, punch the notification bell for all the PvP content. But let's get into these battles, shall we? Keep in mind, the main goal of this video is to demonstrate the destructive power of Double Dragon. Since it is a strategy that takes up a lot of your team composition, what things can we do to be prepared for Double Dragon, and how can we undermine it in our future tournaments? Okay, so opponent number one for the Nut93 is going to be Andy Midori. We'll just say Andy. Andy brought a team kind of similar to the Nuts, except it's Venusaur, Venomoth, Lapras, Kingdra, Celio, and then Skuntank. Now, obviously, since Andy has opted for Venusaur, that's going to shut down a lot of the waters, but it's mainly important to note that having Lapras but not Dragonair, you have that double ice and then dragon coverage that you can utilize, which potentially is a strategy or team composition you can use in your tournaments to say no to Double Dragon. All right, now here we go with round one, game one. The Nut versus Andy. Relicanth open versus a Venusaur. That's not ideal. You don't want to be there. It looks like the Nut opts for a Venusaur, Venusaur mirror, and they swap into their Skuntank, which is kind of smart at that point. That's probably why they brought it, is for the anti-grass, of course. Now, the Skuntank's going to be putting on pressure. I don't think the Nut's going to be too worried about it at this point, considering the dominant strategy we have put together and good to go with the Double Dragon. So we have the Relicanth left over. We know the Venusaur is still a threat. So just as anticipated, he's going to opt to use the Relicanth versus the Skuntank in kind of a neutral matchup, something that can actually answer it without being too threatened with what's going to be coming out next. Obviously, the Venusaur, right? So he goes for an Ancient Power. Looks like we're open for that boost. I don't think we got it. He swaps very quickly. It was timed very well into the Dragonair versus the Venusaur. This is where this matchup wants to be. You're going to Dragon Breath down, and they come in with the Kingdra. They utilized that matchup as very well as well, and they shielded the Dragon Pulse, surprisingly enough. You know, that could have been an Aqua Tail or a return, but they were, you know, a little bit smarter than that, I guess, and they risked it by using the shield, and it was indeed the Dragon Pulse. Now, round one was a massive L. Andy played it very well. We'll put the loss right here, and we will start getting into game two. Now, it looks like the Nut did go for the true Double Dragon strategy. We're seeing Kingdra, Dragonair, and then Celio in the lineup. Okay, they open with the Celio, which evidently has Water Gun. That's actually kind of surprising for the most part. I believe you're going to want to opt for Powder Snow. This makes this kind of matchup with Celio versus Kingdra much more favorable for Kingdra. You don't have as much spam with the Body Slam, so Kingdra has a little more breathing room, right? There's no need for the Nut to swap out. He can take the Water Gun and the Body Slam combos and just Dragon Breath down and be prepared for whatever comes in next. And it looks like we opt to actually use a shield at that point. We want to maintain that lead advantage that we have rolling so far. We have a little bit of lag here, but the Lapras comes in, and wise enough, the Nut has the Outrage prepared and good to go for the Lapras. Obviously, they're going to be using the Ice Shard to Ice Shard down at that point, get a little charge farm in, but we come in with the Celio, which, you know, if you know your matchup mastery, you know that Celio can win straight up versus Lapras. They swapped into their Venomoth, I almost said Venomoth, and then we swap into the Dragonair to kind of outspam it and outpower it. Dragonair is such a powerhouse in the Timeless Cup meta. That's the kind of situation Dragonair wants to be in, to be an answer to say no to something that's going to be neutral coverage. It's a different way to play dragons, as you can see. So now we're in a position that is much more favorable. That Lapras is very, very low on health, and this Celio is pretty healthy, so we're going to be doing the body slam spam to shut it down. And it looks like game 2 is going to be a massive W for the TheNut93 with this brainless double dragon strategy. All right, now it looks like for game 3, we are going to see a Kingdra versus Kingdra mirror match open. They swap out from their Kingdra first, and they come in with this Skunk Tank. This Kingdra is kind of a powerhouse now at this point. It can have that outrage pressure, and it can continue to just Dragon Breath away, doing massive, massive quick damage to the Skunk Tank with the Dragon Breath. They get the crunch off. We're not going to shield at that point. There's no need to. We know they still have a Kingdra potentially sitting in the back, so I think that's a great way to play it. We should see a shield now here, and we do. That makes sense. That's smart. You want to reserve the Dragonair for that Kingdra coming out, right? And here it is. The Kingdra is already going to be at much lower health comparatively to where the Dragonair is. The Dragonair is much more healthy and good to go. We do Dragon Breath down the opposing Kingdra, and we are able to get off an Aqua Tail against the Venusaur that comes out. And we are in a very, very good position because now we have the brainless strat, the plays that win. This is the TheNut93, okay? He's coming in, no shields. He's going to get this Aurora Beam off on the Venusaur for the TKO. And that's a hard GG's. The next victim of this double dragon strategy from the TheNut93. I'm really lost on this one. LIQ, DI, I'm just going to say Lick. Lick brought a team that is a little more interesting. Lick brought Skunk Tank, Frostlass, Victory Bell, Whiscash, Relicanth, and then the Charizard. My guy! All right, now let's do this, shall we? Round 2, game 1, Kingdra open versus the Whiscash. This is more ideal for Kingdra. The Whiscash, I mean, realistically can just go for the Mud Bombs in this matchup to deal the consistent neutral damage, but having access to that Blizzard, you know, it's kind of a guessing game, I guess, to which one you're going to want to build up to. They did not, I think, successfully get a shield bait there. They did just opt to go for the Mud Bombs versus the Kingdra, which I think is smart. Because now they're able to be more spammy, I guess, or to put on more pressure against the Kingdra open. Now, we're going to see the Venusaur come in. This should be a Mud Bomb coming from the Whiscash. It was, correct? Okay. Obviously, the Venusaur is going to Vine Whip down very fast, and it looks like they're opting to actually use Frostlass as a grass counter, which realistically, it does not serve that role. It doesn't function in that role as well as it should, or as well as other ice types are going to. We're able to actually Vine Whip down the Frostlass and have a Frenzy Plant ready and good to go for what is obviously the Victory Bell. Not the most ideal thing to use against the Victory Bell at that point, but we have the Dragonair good to go to come out and to shut down the Victory Bell threat. That's a hard GG's game 1. Let's go to game 2. Looks like we actually had some lag shut out the first attempt for this battle. So this is attempt number 2 of game 2, round 2. But here we go with the Charizard lead versus the Kingdra. Note that this Charizard actually has Fire Spin, so the quick damage, you know, the fast move is doing essentially nothing to the Kingdra. The Kingdra can laugh it off and just deal the heavy, quick, massive Dragon Breath damage, and I can tank one Dragon Claw, and then at this point, you know, it's like, do I use a shield, do I not? And it looks like the Nut opts to not use a shield because we have the double dragon, the brainless double dragon strategy good to go. They come in with the Frostlass, which still is not going to function as well as other ice types as a counter, you know, a hard counter to Dragonair, but it is still able to deal super effective, and it can put on pressure because it can access Avalanche fairly quickly. Note how quickly that Frostlass went down with the Dragon Breath damage, and then this Dragon Pulse is good to go for the Whiscash, which lands. That dealt massive damage. Now the Nut's able to swap into the Venusaur and just Vine Whip down on this Whiscash, using a shield to avoid any Blizzard. GG's. Round 2, as it appears for the TheNut93, was a clean sweep. Next opponent. Right now, getting into round 3 of 5 for this dominant double dragon destruction tournament demonstration by the TheNut93. We are facing up against Flow 2087. We'll just say Flow. Flow brought Relicanth, Dragonair, Charizard, Celio, Lapras, and Victory Bell. First thing I note, obviously they actually did bring the Relicanth. It has a lot of interesting functional roles within the Timeless Cup meta, but then also you have the double ice option to support that in case you run into any strategies that rely heavily on grass. They're going to be there to have Relicanths back. The TheNut93 versus Flow 2087. We see a a Purified Dragonair versus a Kingdra for the Open. It could be carrying Return though, so that's something to note. And this should be actually Return at this point. You're not going to be able to charge farm down with the Dragon Breath if you do not shield, and it looks like the TheNut93 opts to shield to have some charge built up to put on some pressure against whatever comes out next, which evidently is the Victory Bell. So it was smart to actually use the shield in the Open, in my opinion, and we opt for kind of an interesting matchup, a pretty historic matchup. We know for the most part Venusaur is going to win almost every single time against the Victory Bell. Whether even if this is an Acid Spray, we can basically charge farm down. We can Vine Whip down the Victory Bell and have one, if not two, Frenzy Plants and or Sludge Bombs good to go for whatever comes out next, which is the Charizard. So we can get this double Sludge Bomb off, and this is just, I mean, it's pretty much GG's at this point. Yeah, that's done for. GG's. Now hopefully we see Flow 2087 step it up big time here for round 3 game 2 against the TheNut93. We see the same thing. They open up with the Return Dragonair. We have the Kingdra. We know if we shield a Return, we can just Dragon Breath down. Is it an Aqua Tail though? It is an Aqua Tail. Looks like they decided to switch it up a little bit this time, but the Dragon Breath from the Kingdra just does enough quick damage. You're not even able to get to another Aqua Tail at that point. GG's, out comes the Victory Bell. Looks like they played the strategy the exact same way they did the first time. I'm not sure why they didn't really try anything different, but hopefully they were counting on, if they used Aqua Tail instead of Return, they might be able to win the mirror matchup against the Kingdra. So that was a hard lesson learned, and the Acid Spray is going to land again against the Venusaur. We're able to put on the Sludge Bomb pressure. We're in a little bit of a different position though at this point than we were in game 1, because we're not going to be, I guess, as farmable. We're not going to have as much farming opportunity with the Venusaur as we did game 1, but that's okay because we know we can tank a Dragon Claw, get to this Aqua Tail, and with the Dragonair, this is going to be a hard GG's. We have victim number 3 to this double dragon brainless monstrosity from the TheNut93. Somebody needs to stop this. This madness needs to stop. 3 will be facing up against the VPRRRD. So actually, we are just going to say VP for the sake of the cast. Now, VP brought kind of a respectable team. I think a pretty interesting team. We see Whiscash, Dragonair, Blaziken, Drapion, Lapras, and then the Ludicolo. And then what? Yeah. Bruh. Leave a like. All right, now let's see what VP has to bring to the table against the TheNut93. Here we are, round 4, game 1. We have a Blaziken versus Kingdra Open. Not at all favorable for VP. They swap out to the Dragonair. Obviously, at that point, it's wiser. It's a better decision for the TheNut93 to swap out as quick as possible to avoid the Dragon Breath damage. It's unnecessary. They come in with the Celio to deal with the Lappy. Not necessarily a hard counter. It kind of is a hard-ish counter to the Dragonair. It can still take a lot more damage since it is lacking a move like Ice Shard or Dragon Breath, for example, but it can still do some work. Now, the Body Slam spam threat is still going to be very notable and very threatening to the Blaziken, but they do have the opportunity here of farming down with counter to have some good stuff ready to go for whatever comes out next, which is the Kingdra. Unfortunately, Blaze Kick, Blast Burn, going to be extremely resisted by Kingdra with its water and dragon typing, but we still see a shield come out anyway. We want to avoid that damage because we don't know what's sitting in the back, and here it is. We got Ludicolo sitting in the back, so we know at this point we can deal with it from game 1. That is going to be a hard GG's. Let's just go to the next round. Here we go. Round 4, game 2 with VP versus the TheNut93. Someone step it up. Someone shut this mindless double dragon decimation down, okay? Aqua Tail Dragon Pulse at this point. You really don't care. We're going to use a shield. It was a wrap actually, so we know we can Dragon Breath down and have some action good to go for whatever comes out next, which is the Blaziken. And even though they can counter down, that shield pressure is just worth at this point. So we are coming in with the Dragonair to mellow down the Blaziken threat, I guess, but they opt to come in with the Whiscash, and we swap into the Celio. Pretty quick we swapped into the Celio. It was very well timed, and we're able to farm up, I guess, a little bit. We're not necessarily charge farming at this point, but we want to kind of put on that guessing game pressure of, do I go for Aurora Beam? You know, do I have Water Pulse, or am I just going to go straight Body Slam spam? Realistically, I think since you have a Powder Snow Celio, it's just best to go for the Body Slam spam to deal that massive pressure. Actually, instead of massive damage, we're going to deal the massive pressure. We know we can take another Mud Bomb and come in with this Body Slam for not necessarily the KO, but we can do the quick sniping, I guess that's what I like to call it, sniping with the fast move damage to get rid of the Whiscash. The Whiscash is eliminated, and the Aqua Tail good to go for that Blaze Fire Chicken. GG's, another clean sweep. Now with what we've seen so far up to round 4, about to get into round 5, if you bring double elemental in your team of 3 with a battle against somebody who has a double dragon strategy, which, you know, bringing double elemental might be a strong possibility, especially for those battlers who opt to use a fire starter. You know, example, we've seen people who have Charizard, they bring grass support, and sometimes they'll bring both in the same team of 3 to battle up against the double dragon strategy. Now, since you have double dragon, that almost shuts down that entire team because it's going to be resisting the double elemental. It's very hard for double elemental teams and strategies to deal with double dragon. It's almost impossible. You know, without that neutral coverage, it just hard shuts you out. It is a dragon gate. Here, it is important to note that the TheNut93 is undefeated in terms of rounds, so they are 4-0, but also they have only lost one single battle, and that was in round 1, game 1, and in that loss, they didn't actually use double dragon. That's probably the only reason the Nut lost round 1, game 1. Now for this final here for round 5, the TheNut93 is going to be faced up against No Game, No Life, respect the name. No Game, No Life also has, in my opinion, a respectable team. We see Venusaur, Dragonair, Celio, Venomoth, Golduck, and then Whiscash, right? The Golduck action, it has new moves now if you did not know, and hopefully we see those new moves come into play. I think ideally you would want to run Confusion and Ice Beam as a staple, but it's possible this Golduck could be running Water Gun. Round 5, game 1, yes, we are in the finals. Now, I anticipate if No Game, No Life does not bring Dragonair and Celio, they are going to have a lot of trouble against the TheNut93 running this disrespectful double dragon strategy. They opt to actually open up with the Whiscash. Now, we should see the Mud Bomb pressure come out, which we do. The TheNut93 is going to return the pressure at this point with an Outrage. We do see a shield there. That is what we want to see since we're just putting on the pressure against the Whiscash in the open. We should not shield the next Mud Bomb that's going to be coming from this Whiscash. I think at this point that would be nonsense. I anticipate, okay, we do come in with the Dragonair. At this point, it is realistically smart, I guess, the right choice to use the shield. You don't want this Dragonair taking too much damage, right? They still have potentially Celio, and they still have potentially their own Dragonair to answer yours. So we are coming in with the Dragon Pulse. We do see a shield, which was smart on the No Game, No Life side of this battle so far, but you see that swap. This is just perfect. This is why I think the Nut called it a brainless play, a brainless strategy, because you don't necessarily need to think about your plays. You don't need to think about the matchups. You just answer with a hard swap, which, you know, could be a good strategy for the most part if you're just straight going for a win, if you're going for sweeps, but it's disrespectful, man. GG's. Without exception, the TheNut93 has opened up with Kingdra every single time, given its, you know, possibly its IVs, but given its water and dragon typing, it just has so many resistances in the Timeless Cup meta that when combined with this double dragon strategy, it is such an insane powerful lead. I believe the whole entire strategy is dependent on Kingdra and leading with Kingdra and playing the rest of the game from there, because they have this Celio. You're going to let that Celio use its energy. You're not too worried at all because you have your own Celio that you can come out and answer their Celio with to return the Body Slam spam pressure. You know you can take some damage. You're not even worried about it. They sheer and strictly have the disadvantage at this point. And here, as you can see, they swap out. They swap into their Venusaur to answer the Celio, I guess, is kind of a hard counter. But with this double dragon destruction, you can come in with this Dragonair, do the Dragon Breath damage. You don't even need to go for the Dragon Pulse at this point. They have no shields. Just go for the Aqua Tail, be more energy efficient. Energy efficient, and you're going to be ready for whatever comes out next, which we see is their Celio. So they get off some body slam, spam pressure, not a big deal. We have the Water Pulse good to go. Celio is going to be Gonzo, given one more Dragon Breath, and out comes this Golduck. Now, hopefully it has Cross Chop. Okay, it does. It has the good new moves, and it is also running Confusion, which is, I guess, the variant I would run if I were running a Golduck, but we still have the Celio left over in a 1 versus 0 shield scenario. The Golduck's just not going to be able to keep up with the Powder Snow and Body Slam spam pressure. Stinking G's. Given this overwhelming dominant victory by the TheNut93 for this Timeless Cup tournament, it goes without saying that we all need to be prepared in our Timeless Cup tournaments to be able to answer a double dragon team composition. Any double dragon strategy needs an answer. Otherwise, you can get steamrolled and you will end up like all 5 of these victims that attended this tournament with the TheNut93. I think there are a few different ways realistically you could answer a double dragon strategy that includes Celio as support. I mean, for example, I believe a pick like Sudowoodo can do some work against that team composition. The first thing that comes to mind is running your own double dragon strategy, but we've seen so many different strategies come out from the Timeless Cup so far. I'm very excited and very interested to see what you actually think about the double dragon strategy that we've seen from the TheNut93 for this Timeless Cup tournament. Whatever your thoughts are, whether good or bad, throw them down in the comments below. Let's have a discussion about it. But also, how are you going to answer a double dragon strategy? I think picks like Sudowoodo and picks that can also provide neutral coverage, even a double ice strategy, or picks like Drapion, right? Like a Skunk Tank can also still do some work because they're going to have a lot of general neutral coverage against the Timeless Cup meta as a whole. You definitely need to be prepared to face double dragon. As we saw, it does not take much skill, it does not take much strategy to win with a double dragon team composition, so be prepared. As always, remember to leave a like, please, it does support the video. But GG's to the brainless double dragon plays, and GG's to the TheNut93, and GG's to this video because it is over. Subscribe if you feel the Go Stadium vibe, and power up punch that notification bell for all the PvP content. That is it for this video. We'll see you in the next video. Battlers, take it one battle at a time, and have a good freaking day.